The old woman had not eaten in 3 days. She sat alone in a cold, silent mansion, surrounded by priceless paintings, polished marble, and servants who had stopped asking what she wanted. Then a fired black single father walked through the kitchen door carrying nothing but a paper bag of groceries and the last few dollars in his pocket. He had no idea that giving one hungry stranger a warm meal would change his life forever, and expose a secret that one of the richest families in the city had spent years hiding. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the smallest act of compassion can create the biggest change. Marcus Reed had never imagined his life would become a struggle just to keep the lights on. At 38, he was a single father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, in a small apartment above an aging laundromat. Marcus worked as a kitchen assistant at an upscale restaurant downtown, where he spent long hours chopping vegetables, washing dishes, and preparing meals for people who could spend more on one dinner than he could earn in a week. He did not complain. Every night, he came home exhausted, but Lily always ran into his arms as if he had returned from a war. That little smile was the reason he kept going. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, Marcus was fired. The restaurant manager blamed him for a mistake he had not made. A wealthy customer had complained about a missing diamond bracelet, and because Marcus had been working near the private dining room, suspicion fell on him. Marcus tried to explain that he had never touched the woman's belongings, but nobody wanted to listen. Within minutes, his apron was taken away, his final paycheck was handed to him, and he was escorted through the back door as rain soaked his shirt. He walked home carrying a cardboard box filled with the few things he had kept in his locker. His pride hurt more than his empty wallet. But when he opened the apartment door, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table doing her homework. She looked up and smiled, unaware that her father had just lost the job that paid their rent. Marcus smiled back and hid the fear in his eyes. Over the next 2 weeks, he applied everywhere. Hotels, diners, grocery stores, cafeterias, construction sites, anywhere that might give him a chance. But every application seemed to disappear into silence. Bills piled up. The refrigerator became nearly empty. One evening, Marcus stood in the kitchen staring at the last carton of milk and 2 eggs. He made scrambled eggs for Lily and told her he wasn't hungry. He was lying. The following morning, Marcus took a temporary delivery job, bringing groceries to wealthy homes across the city. It was humiliating at first, but he told himself there was no shame in honest work. One afternoon, his final delivery was to a massive gated estate belonging to Eleanor Whitmore, the elderly mother of billionaire businessman Jonathan Whitmore. Marcus had heard the name before. Everyone had. Jonathan Whitmore owned technology companies, luxury hotels, and several skyscrapers downtown. His mother lived in a mansion so enormous that Marcus wondered how anyone could possibly feel lonely inside it. When he arrived, the front gate was open. No one came to receive the groceries, so Marcus carried the bags inside. The house was strangely quiet. He called out, but nobody answered. As he turned to leave, he noticed a faint sound coming from a sitting room. It was an elderly woman coughing. Marcus followed the sound and found Eleanor sitting in a large chair beside a cold fireplace. Her face was pale. A plate of untouched food sat on a nearby table, covered with a silver lid. Her hands trembled as she tried to lift a glass of water. Marcus immediately forgot about the delivery. He helped her sit comfortably and asked if she had eaten. Eleanor shook her head. Her voice was weak when she admitted she had no appetite and hadn't eaten properly for days. Marcus looked around the enormous room. There were expensive decorations everywhere, but something about the silence broke his heart. He could have left. Instead, he walked into the kitchen. The refrigerator was filled with expensive ingredients, but Marcus ignored most of them. He found chicken, rice, carrots, and a few herbs. With the instinct of someone who had spent years feeding strangers, he began cooking. Soon the kitchen filled with the warm smell of chicken soup and seasoned rice. Eleanor watched from the doorway, confused. Marcus carried a small bowl to her and waited until she tasted it. For the first time in days, Eleanor smiled. She ate slowly, then asked Marcus where he had learned to cook. He told her about the restaurant, about losing his job, and about his daughter. He did not ask for sympathy. He simply told the truth. That evening, Eleanor ate every bite. Marcus returned to his apartment with no idea that someone had been watching him. Jonathan Whitmore had arrived home unexpectedly. He was furious when he learned that a stranger had entered his mother's kitchen and prepared her food. He demanded to know who Marcus was and why he had been allowed inside. But before anyone could explain, Eleanor quietly told her son that Marcus was the first person in months who had treated her like a human being instead of an obligation. Jonathan was stunned. His mother had refused every chef they hired. She barely touched food prepared by private staff. Yet she had eaten a full meal cooked by a man who had walked into their home carrying grocery bags. The next morning, Marcus received a phone call. Jonathan offered him a job. Marcus almost refused. He assumed it was pity. He said he needed work, not charity. But Jonathan surprised him by offering Marcus a position as his mother's personal cook and companion, with a salary large enough to clear his debts and provide stability for Lily. Marcus accepted cautiously. Days became weeks. Eleanor began eating regularly again. Marcus cooked simple meals rather than extravagant ones, because he understood that food was not only about taste. Sometimes it was about memory. He made the chicken soup his grandmother had once prepared for him. He baked cornbread the way his mother used to on Sunday mornings. He even taught Eleanor how to make pancakes, and she laughed the first time she flipped one too high and nearly dropped it on the floor. For the first time in years, the mansion felt alive. Lily became part of that life too. Eleanor loved having the little girl around. They played cards, read books, and sat by the window watching birds in the garden. Marcus began to see something changing in his daughter. She no longer worried about whether the electricity would be shut off. She could sleep without hearing her father quietly calculating bills at the kitchen table. But then, one afternoon, Marcus discovered something that changed everything. While cleaning an old storage room, he found a dusty box containing photographs and handwritten letters. One photograph showed Eleanor standing beside a young black man who looked strangely familiar. Marcus froze. The man was his father. He had not seen a photograph of his father since childhood. For years, Marcus had been told that his father had abandoned the family. His mother had died believing that story. Marcus had carried the pain of that abandonment his entire life. But inside the box was a letter written by Eleanor. It revealed that Marcus's father had once worked for the Whitmore family. He had been a loyal employee who had saved Eleanor's life during a serious medical emergency many years earlier. He had also secretly sent money to Marcus's mother because he believed Marcus would be better off away from him while he struggled with his own circumstances. But the most shocking part was still hidden beneath the letters. Eleanor had known about Marcus for years. She had searched for him. She had even tried to help him anonymously after his father's death. Marcus stood in that dusty room with tears streaming down his face, realizing that the story he had believed about his father had never been complete. When Jonathan discovered what Marcus had found, he finally confessed the truth. His father had hidden the letters because he feared scandal and believed Marcus's family had no place in the Whitmore world. Eleanor had spent decades regretting that decision. Marcus could have walked away. Instead, he went to Eleanor. The elderly woman was sitting by the window when he entered. He placed the letters on her lap. She looked at him, tears filling her eyes. Marcus did not blame her. He simply held her hand. That moment changed Jonathan too. For the first time, the billionaire understood that wealth could build walls but could never erase the consequences of choices made long ago. Months later, Jonathan did something nobody expected. He helped Marcus open his own community kitchen, a place where unemployed parents, struggling families, and elderly people could receive warm meals without judgment. Marcus became its director, while Eleanor insisted on being its honorary founder. The first meal served there was chicken soup. The same simple soup that had once been cooked in a billionaire's mansion by a desperate father with only a few dollars in his pocket. Marcus never forgot the day he was fired. At the time, he thought losing his job was the beginning of the end. Years later, he realized it had been the beginning of a completely different life. Sometimes the door that closes in your face is not a punishment. Sometimes it is quietly pushing you toward the door you were meant to open. And sometimes, the person who needs saving is not the person everyone thinks is helpless. Eleanor had money, security, and a mansion, but she was starving for something money could never buy, genuine human connection. Marcus had almost nothing, yet he gave her what she needed most. Kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes people deserve second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps these stories reach more people who may need a little hope. And before we end, leave a comment saying, kindness always comes back, if you believe that one good act can change a person's entire life. Because Marcus learned something that day that none of the billions in the Whitmore family could ever purchase. When you feed someone's hunger with kindness, you may discover that your own heart was the one waiting to be healed.